Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about small talk. As you know, small talk refers to light, simple conversations that you have with another person, usually about the news or the weather or a sporting event or a sports team. In particular, in this English lesson, I want to talk about the kinds of phrases we use on a Friday afternoon as we're going home from work or going home from school, and then the kinds of phrases we would use on a Monday morning after the weekend. And I want to start by talking about sports. On a Friday afternoon, if you are having a little small talk conversation with someone, you might say things like this. Are you going to watch the game this weekend? Or are you going to catch a game this weekend? Sometimes in English, we use the verb to catch to talk about watching a sporting event. And I'm not saying hockey game or baseball game. You can fill that in yourself. Are you going to watch the hockey game this weekend? And then the person will know what game you're talking about. On a Monday, though, there's a couple things you might say if you're still having a conversation about sports. You might say something like this. Did you catch the game this weekend? Did you catch the hockey game this weekend? Or you might just use the name of the sports team. You might say something like this. How about those Blue Jays? How about those Maple Leafs? And that will start a little small talk conversation on a Monday morning. So on a Friday, you say something like, are you going to watch the game this weekend? And then on a Monday, you say something like, did you catch the game this weekend? Or how about those Blue Jays? By the way, how about those Blue Jays? Are you following Major League Baseball? They're number one right now. Quite often, small talk is about the weather. Human beings love talking about the weather, the sun and the rain and the snow and all the different types of weather that you get. On a Friday, as you're leaving work, you might say something like this. Looks like there's a storm rolling in this weekend. Or you might say something like this. Weather-wise, it looks like a nice weekend ahead. In English, sometimes when we want to refer to something, we add a dash and the word wise. So like weather-wise, it looks like a nice weekend ahead. So those are the two things you might say on a Friday. If you know there's a storm coming, looks like there's a storm rolling in this weekend. If you know it's going to be a nice weekend weather-wise, it looks like a nice weekend. On a Monday, when you're talking to someone about what the weather was like on the weekend, you might say something like this. That was some storm, wasn't it? That was some snowstorm, wasn't it? Basically, just bringing up the fact that there was a storm over the weekend. Or you might say something like this. Wasn't the weather just gorgeous over the weekend? When you say that, you're basically saying it was sunny and beautiful, not too hot, not too cold. So when you're talking about the weather on a Friday, looks like there's a storm rolling in this weekend, or weather-wise, it looks like a nice weekend ahead. And then on a Monday, that was some storm, wasn't it? Or wasn't the weather just gorgeous over the weekend? Another very common small talk topic is the news. That's really hard to say, by the way. Small talk topic, small talk topic. Try saying that out loud 3 times in a row. People love talking about the things that are happening in their town or city or in the world. People love talking about the news. And on a Friday, as you're leaving work or school, you can say things like this. They say Toronto's going to be busy this weekend because there is a baseball game, a hockey game, and a soccer game. Quite often in English, when we're talking about something that we saw on the news or heard on the news or read in a news article, we start with the words they say. Another example would be they say crossing the border is going to take a while because of the long weekend. So when you're leaving on a Friday, those would be 2 very common things to say. Or you can build your own sentence starting with the words they say. On a Monday, you might say something like this. Did you hear about the car accident in Toronto? Or did you hear about the flooding in Texas? So we use the words did you hear to start a sentence or a question on a Monday so we can continue having some small talk conversation about the news. So on a Friday, start a sentence with they say and then talk about something that you heard or saw on the news. And then on a Monday, start a question with did you hear about? Sometimes small talk is about what people are going to do on the weekend or what they did do on the weekend, depending if it's Friday or Monday. And there is one question that is very common on a Friday, and it's the question, any plans for the weekend? This is a shorter version of the question, do you have any plans for the weekend? And it's very common as I'm leaving work on a Friday for someone to ask me this question or for me to ask someone else this question. Any plans for the weekend? Do you have any plans for the weekend? And then on Monday, there's the follow-up question. how was your weekend? This again is a very common thing to hear on a Monday morning. When you return to school after a weekend or when you return to work, someone will probably say, how was your weekend? Or you might even ask someone, how was your weekend? So on a Friday, any plans for the weekend? On a Monday, how was your weekend? Well, hey, thank you so much for watching this English lesson about small talk phrases you can use on a Friday and then small talk phrases you can use on a Monday. These are very common and I hope you can use them in one of your next English conversations. Remember, if this is your first time here, don't forget to click the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and please do consider becoming a member. There is a join button below. If you click it, it will explain all of the details. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week with another English lesson. Bye.